Welcome to the Get Trauma Informed podcast, dedicated to unraveling the complexities of trauma, its pervasive impact, and the journey towards holistic recovery and realignment. If your radiance has ever felt muted, like I and thousands of others, you're in the right place to reignite your inner light. I'm your host, Wellness Coach Liz Blanding, and this is the Get Trauma Informed podcast. Hi, welcome to this episode of Get Trauma Informed. I'm telling you, we have an impromptu conversation in regards to CTA or Chicago Transit workers, right? But we have Coach Bart Mathews with us today, and he has worn many hats. So today he's going to peel off some layers and talk to you a little bit about trauma in transit workers. Coach Mike, how are you today?
I am fantastic. And thank you for inviting me here, Wellness Coach Liz, for another opportunity to be on your show and share some of my truth.
I'm telling you, it's always a great opportunity when we get together because we're creators, you all. And so being able to be in this trauma space and open up is just like, it's amazing because we're getting so many people that say, wow, I did not see trauma in that way. And that's what our overarching message is. That's to help us to become aware of the trauma and then work through it. So today, Coach Michael is gracing us with giving us some insight into the trauma that transit workers face. Coach Mike?
Well, thank you for this wonderful platform. And I'm going to speak for a few minutes, then I'll turn it back over to Wellness Coach Liz. And I've been retired from the Chicago Transit Authority since 2012. And yes, you see me in my old uniform with the CTA hat on. And for all you Chicago Transit Authority workers, you know I'm out of uniform. Why? Because of my tie. Couldn't find the old tie that was a standard operating procedure item. So if I went to work like this today, I'd get a write-up and got sent home. But I put a tie on so I can still look professional because I want to represent myself and the Chicago Transit Authority in a positive light. So I'm about to share with you all something that I went through, and most Chicago Transit Authority operators or city, municipal, state, county, federal, and domestically in all of the countries around the world. If you're a train operator, or if you're a bus operator, if you're a rail operator, or you just do other things for the authority by working with the public, it brings on a plethora of trauma that if you were like me, you went through it, but you didn't even know you were dealing with trauma. Because I went through it too and did not know. So the person that you see today, if you follow Michael Bart Mathews on Facebook and look at all of the posts or Pathway to Trauma Recovery with Wellness Coaching Days and our Pathway to Trauma Recovery group, you will see a real polished person. But how did I get to be that polished person by going through the trauma while operating that machinery behind me, which was affording me a lifestyle to pay the rent, pay the car note, put food on my back, and just have a plethora of benefits from being a Chicago Transit Authority employee. Yeah, I worked the 40-40-40 plan, 40 hours a week, 40 years of my life to retire on 40% of my income, but we shift to the right brain. The creator side, as you heard Wellness Coach Liz say, we are creators. But let's get back to the point, because you never tell a point without a story. You never tell a story without a point. And the point is that most, if not all, transit workers in any country, in any language, in any vehicle that you are operating on the rails or down the highways and byways, transporting mama's precious cargoes from young to old around the city, because we are people moving people, we face trauma. Right? You even face trauma before you get the job. But let me talk about the trauma on the job, that I was not trauma aware and I was not trauma informed. So let me make that clear. But I was going through the trauma. I didn't even know this till after I retired, till about 10 years after I retired. I didn't find out about what the trauma was until then by becoming a professional certified trauma recovery coach along with Wellness Coach Liz, to get that professional credential that allows Wellness Coach Liz and I to be in front of you today to share this wonderful information and how you can transform your trauma awareness and trauma informed experience by listening, learning, and applying my particular story about not being trauma aware and not being trauma informed, but this is what we were going through. We, meaning the Chicago Transit Authority operators and all you other operators who operated heavy machinery, go through for your city, state, and federal governments. Okay? Oh, I know that was a mouthful. Now let me get to the trauma. So I'm going to read a couple of things first, okay? So we can be specifically clear that this is nothing that I'm making up, but I actually experienced it. Is that okay, wellness coach Liz, to take that route?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Okay. Yes, because the wellness coach Liz and I had a conversation, and at first she was going to interview me. She had about a ton of questions she wanted to ask me, and then her light bulb went off, and she said, "Well, Mike, let's just read some professional things that has been written by other professionals that would encompass all of your coworkers around the world that they all have went through and may not be trauma aware and trauma informed. So men, when you support empowering women and they give you a nugget, hint, hint, wink, wink, you kind of listen to them. So I listened to Wellness Coach Liz, and we're going to take her around on this one, okay? That okay with you, Wellness Coach Liz?
Oh, that's okay with me. I am here for it.
All right, all right, all right. Well, here we go. Transit workers face a high risk of exposure to traumatic incidents and can experience a range of mental health issues, including post-traumatic stress disorder. That's PTSD. And I don't really have to go through every situation that a transit operator, especially for the buses or even the rails, when you get in to do the pre-trip of your vehicle and you first pull it out and then you get onto the streets. For me, that's when the trauma started. Why? Because you're taught to not be in an accident. And if it's not even your fault and you become involved in an accident, the first thing goes through your mind is the passenger okay inside of your vehicle? Is the passenger okay to hit your vehicle? Or am I going to get fired because I was in an accident? Because that's one of the things they teach and preach. You know, we're supposed to, in defensive driving, we understand the Smith system: aim high and steer, get the big picture, leave yourself an out, keep your eyes moving. So we were taught how to avoid accidents. But the trauma of that pressure being on you, of just being in those situations, especially when you're in downtown, a city center of an urban area where there's a bumper to bumper 12 noon traffic and people are darting in, darting out. You got a busload of people, they standing up, holding on to the rails. Every time you hit the bus, they jerk like this, hit the brakes, they jerk like this, and they may fall. All of those are traumatic situations. And for my brothers and sisters on the rail, when you say next stop, city center, and you got a train full of people going 30 miles an hour, and then you're starting to hit the brakes and you slow down, then you're approaching a station where you have a crowd of people that could jump out in front of the train and you accidentally hit them, or when you close the doors, even though the rail drivers are trained to look out of the operator's cab, look down the lane to make sure nobody's in there. But if somebody darts in and out that door, and you close up the door, that's something else that the rail operators are also going through when it comes down to trauma. But let me move on. It's called stressful work environment, and that's what I just explained. Stressful work environment. So let me read a little bit more. And this is from my due diligence and my research as what I'm reading. But when I'm speaking to you directly at the camera, not reading, that's from my own personal experience, without being trauma informed and not being trauma aware. I'm just sharing my personal experience, okay? Okay. A stressful work environment. Transit workers experience high levels of stress, anxiety, and depression, and are at risk of developing stress-related illnesses like heart disease and musculoskeletal disorders. I kind of pretty think if you were like me, if you would have known that before you applied for the job, I don't think I'd have took it, because I didn't know it was going to be a building up of stress that I didn't know about. You know, it paid well, good benefits. You can pay your rent, you can pay your mortgage, you can get you a car, you can take a few trips, you can help a nonprofit, you can literally help others to help themselves because you helped yourself. But the stress and the PTSD and the depression and the possible heart problems that comes with being a transit worker is phenomenal. And again, if you are like me, you are not trauma aware and you are not trauma informed. So when you took off work because something happened, you thought you were just getting sick on your own. But the job was making you, me, us sick. And we didn't even know it. The just over broke job. 40 hours a week, 40 years of your life to retire on 40 cents, 40% of your income, and you had to have the stress that came along with it. So let me continue to go further. Assault. The rate of reported major assaults against transit workers in the United States reached 15 years high in 2023. That's a short time ago. Reached a 15-year high in 2023. Now, we used to have Chicago police. In Chicago, the police would follow the bus. They'd get on the bus. They'd try to look all important, but they would really lean over and say, "What's in that pouch?" Because they thought we carried pistols, or do you have a knife in your pocket? Well, I'm not going to say I ever did because I never carried a pistol, but was willing to defend myself. But as you're in a work environment, that's an extra added stress even thinking about when you pull up on a bus stop and you got a gang full of people standing on the corner, you don't know what they may do to you. So now they even put up shields to protect the bus operators and lock the rail operators inside of a cab so the general public could not get to them. Do you know how stressful that is? I know because I lived it. I worked it. And I'm speaking to the transit workers, but I'm also speaking to the passengers who ride transit buses who are not trauma informed and not trauma aware. And the way that you act toward the transit workers causes trauma for not only you, but the passengers and the employees of the transit agencies around the world. Now, here's the next one. Verbal abuse. Verbal abuse. Transit workers experience frequent verbal abuse, which can have a significant impact on their mental health. But we have a book out called Pathway to Trauma Recovery. I think you can see Wellness Coach Liz's book a little bit better than mine. Pathway Trauma Recovery, where we have 13 authors who talks about, including myself, and we talk about our trauma-related, trauma-informed trauma experiences. And we have a professional athlete who also shares his story about his traumatic experiences. So as we continue to go and forward this story, I'm going to give it back over to Wellness Coach Liz in a very few minutes. But we want you to take a look at our Pathway to Trauma Recovery book and the answers, the results, the way that you can understand triggers, you can understand how to balance yourself. Right now, Wellness Coach Liz, let's switch the conversation just a little bit. Can you talk about a little bit about the Pathway to Trauma Recovery book, the project, and some of the resources and results, and then I'll end up with a little bit more about trauma recovery from the transit operator's point of view.
Absolutely. And thank you so much for giving us that insight as you were speaking and giving us that. I didn't think about how much trauma is placed upon the driver because as a transit customer years and years ago, well, even like in high school, I was once on a transit bus and got hit because a fight broke out. Never once did I think about all of the stress that's placed onto that operator who's responsible for all of the people that are on the bus. And you painted that picture so vividly about when the bus stops and people are going forward and you're responsible for that. I can remember holding on, right, to the rail. So absolutely. But we're talking about Pathway to Trauma Recovery book, which is amazing because you can relate. One of the stories in the book you're able to relate to. We have phenomenal authors, as Coach Mike just talked about, phenomenal authors in the foreword by Marcus Ogden, right, who also shared his trauma story, but all of the phenomenal authors. And not only do we have the Pathway to Trauma Recovery book that you can read it in your own voice, the author's stories and how they overcame trauma and through their trauma journey and what in the different modalities or different self-care plans that they put together, but you can also visit us at Oasis Wellness CTRS and join the trauma support group. And therefore you can meet us live and have the opportunity to join the trauma recovery group. And also there are many, many tools that can help you as you move forward in your trauma journey. So we have complimentary programs and resources to help you move forward. Thank you, Coach Mike, for bringing that to our attention, how much stress, tension, and pressure is placed on the transit workers. Back over to you.
Okay, is that oasiswellnessctrs.com?
That is correct. And it'll also be in the show notes of this mini for those that are listening through audio or through the different podcasting platforms. You'll be able to reach it there as well.
Okay, we want to respect your time and thank you for those wonderful comments, Wellness Coach Liz. How much time do we have so I know how far to go?
We're clicking down to our last 2 minutes.
Okay, last 2 minutes. I'll just read mental health resources from the FTA. Includes information on suicide prevention, warning signs, risk factors, treatments, and therapy. There's also room for workplace intervention, agency culture, especially the culture at the transit agencies. It's like anything that happens and you have to go into the manager's office, the thought process is you're going to be charged with it. And most of that problem is the managers are not trauma aware or trauma informed, even though some of them came from the bus operator position. And the ones who never did the jobs that we do, rail or bus, they just don't know what they don't know. So when you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change. So when you change the way you look at your trauma, the trauma you look at change. And we don't want to keep you in trauma. We just want to assure you that each and every one of you that are listening to the sound of my voice, just like me, who were not trauma informed, who was not trauma aware, you can be so successful. You can learn how to balance, you can learn your triggers, and you can be more fruitful than ever by being balanced. And I thank you for your time, Wellness Coach Liz. I'm Michael Bart Mathews, retired Chicago Transit Authority employee.
Wow. Thank you so much for that. You gave us such a burst of information. And that is one of the things that we focus on in trauma recovery is understanding, becoming aware of your trauma, and then moving past it because there is light at the end of the tunnel. And one other thing I wanted to mention about all of our amazing authors in the Pathway to Trauma Recovery book is that all of them have suffered some sense of trauma, but they didn't stay there. They moved over by applying the different resources and also by applying self-care to their daily regimen. We look forward to seeing you on the next Get Trauma Informed podcast. Bye for now. And thank you again, Coach Mike. We appreciate you.
You're welcome. Next stop, Urban America.
It's time to buckle up. No more suffering in silence. Our Power Pack journey to recovery and realignment starts now. Remember, you are collateral damage on someone else's warpath. Trauma is not your fault. Recovery, however, is your responsibility. I'm your host, Wellness Coach Liz Blanding, and this is the Get Trauma Informed podcast.